Good evening, folks. Welcome to the show. I hope everybody is well. Been a quiet week for me, generally speaking. I went doing archery, so those on Facebook would have seen some photos of me with a medieval style longbow, which is kind of fun. I got to shoot arrows, and I missed quite a few times, and I hit quite a few times, and I lost one arrow, so I didn't do too bad. Oh dear. Let's just change this light up a little bit. Oh, it's going on. There we go. There we go. That's a bit more like it. A little less harsh. Oh dear. Yeah. So I had a good Sunday. That was it. I lose track. I'm literally off all month this month, and I'm kind of losing track of what day of the week it is and all that kind of stuff. So it's all a little bit weird for me at the moment. Why am I taking the entire month off? Well, it's been the only chance this year for me to actually take kind of holiday and stuff like that. So it was it was great fun. Went out and then went out for a bit of a walk and met a family of Canada geese, which was kind of cool. And the rest of the week I've been writing. So obviously I did the Carriers review, which apparently nobody wants to watch. Why do I bother sometimes? That's a very, very slow moving one. But I suspect the next one will be a bit faster moving. The next review will be of Blue Sunshine, the Jeff Lieberman film, which is an interesting film. Very interesting film. I think it's an interesting director, kind of delving into the whole sort of the kind of thing about drugs, PSAs, and all that sort of stuff as part of this. And I rewatched a film called Remote Control, which was a later one of his, which has some similar kind of themes of these sort of recreational activities, shall we say, that can end up being used as a weapon against you to control you and all that kind of stuff. So it's turning out to be quite an interesting one. I've probably got about a third of it to write. I have written and recorded about 12 minutes or so far. So I've got about another 3-5 minutes worth of stuff I want to cover before I can start editing the stuff. So I think that should be kind of fun. Do we call you the Lampy Arrow or Lampy Eye? It's funny, somebody kind of says, I didn't expect you to look like that on one of the photos. I was like, well, I ain't Jeremy Renner, unfortunately. I'm screaming towards 50 years old. So that is not in the too distant future, put it that way. Some nice pics of you on your day out on Sunday, Glenn. Glad you had a great time. Yeah, it was a nice day. It's very pleasant. And it's not that far from here either. It's about 40 minutes out. So it was quite good. Yeah. So I guess, what we're going to talk about. I think what I had been following, there's been a whole kind of hullabaloo at the moment regarding OnlyFans, and just before I got my channel started, dang it. OnlyFans, as a lot of people know, very sex-centric kind of site where people can subscribe to certain users and see them naked, see them doing stuff, kind of general adult sort of stuff, all that kind of thing. Generally speaking, I would have said it's a relatively harmless kind of site. It's adult, but I think the BBC kind of did some trawling and found some kind of chicanery going on somewhere along the line involving underage people using the service, which is always going to be a problem no matter what you do. You get that even on YouTube and Twitter and Facebook and all that kind of stuff. So these kind of things sort of happen. But the BBC kind of blew it out of any kind of proportion, all that sort of stuff. And consequently, OnlyFans has been looking at kind of banking options and things like that, because historically there's been an issue with sites like this actually being able to kind of use payment services, be it PayPal, be it banking services or whatever. It's been a historic issue because a lot of these banks suddenly become, moral guardians, which is ironic, really, considering how shittily most banks, big banks, actually behave on the world stage. It's kind of amazing that they would feel that sex is the one thing they have to take a stand on. However, it's looking like basically because OnlyFans wants to kind of expand, now they're going to get rid of all that stuff, and it's kind of ridiculous, really, when you sort of look at that kind of stuff. Why would I be talking about that on something like this? Well, it's kind of one of those things that pornography is basically, as has been kind of like said, it's basically the canary in the coal mine of freedom of speech. So when you get these kind of things sort of going on, it's worth paying attention to, even if you have no interest in those sites. And I have no interest in that site. I've never visited it or anything like that. I have no interest in going over there. And if I want pornography, it's free in a lot of places. There's an argument about ethics in that kind of stuff, but I can't say it's something I've concerned myself with too much. However, it's again, these tech companies and the banking companies and all this kind of stuff are really kind of causing some issues. When it comes to any kind of like more fringe expression, I think I think kind of like sex work and that kind of stuff on, pornography on the internet is not really one of the, or at least shouldn't be one of the biggest concerns. 2 seconds, I just realised something. There we go. Thought something wasn't right. It looks a little dark over there. The skull wasn't lit. We can't have that. But banks' moral guardians were doomed. Yes. When you consider what the banks do, I think it was HSBC, allegedly. They were caught in all sorts of schemes with some very unsavoury people. And most banks have been kind of guilty of that in one way or another. They don't seem to worry about it when it's multi-billion dollar exchanges and all that kind of stuff. As long as they stand to make decent money out of it, they're fine with it. When it comes to being something like a much less high profile kind of thing, like processing payments for adult sites and that kind of stuff, they seem to get a stick up their arse about it, ironically. Perhaps they should film that and put that on OnlyFans. So I kind of find that very egregious. It sounds like such a small thing, and it always does when you talk about something like a site like OnlyFans and stuff like that. But the long and short of it all is that there's unelected bodies who are policing content on the internet, and that's always a kind of concerning thing. Because where does that stop? Certainly when there's a shift in a kind of moral framework within a society, particularly within Europe and America, that suddenly we get the equivalent of the video nasty scare and all that kind of stuff happening again. It's very problematic, to say the least. Oh dear. Banks moral. Yeah, I read that one. I think I might have missed something on the chat there, but typical had to be my bank. Yes. To be fair, many of the banks have been guilty of that kind of stuff. HSBC is just one of the bigger ones, because they have a massive international presence, as is suggested by the name. HSBC, Hong Kong, Shanghai Banking Company or Corporation or whatever. Why are we telling Kieran to tidy his room? I'm sure it probably needs tidying or something like that. But yeah. Yeah, and the weird thing is, it's like a lot of this reaction to, kind of like why these banks are suddenly paying attention to OnlyFans, and because they've been suddenly hit the news, is apparently because the BBC did their little stuck their oar in, which I find a little uncomfortable. That the BBC should be kicking off on a moral high ground when, quite frankly, recent history, in fact, long-running history of the BBC has been anything but moral, because he's a lazy prick. Kerry. His words not fair enough. Oh, dear. Oh, it's because you're your age, is it? Yeah, I forgot you're the baby of the bunch here, aren't you? I don't think I'm probably the oldest, or at least very close to. Yeah, and another piece of shitness in the world that's become apparent is Apple's current behaviour. They've been trying to. Excuse me if you can hear my stomach rumbling. I've got this rumbling in my gut at the moment. I don't quite know what that's all about. Apple have been doing this thing, which is basically supposed to scan your photos and find if it matches with a certain type of content, shall we say. And it seems to do this in a couple of ways. It's not an exact match. It's using a kind of AI to sort of match up with a known database. But it kind of looks at something and goes, is that similar? Da, 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 da. And then basically reports you to Apple. And that's kind of scary. Again, it's another one of those things. It's like with the OnlyFans thing, in fact. The concerns are always young people. It's always the kids that are one of those things that they get kind of riled up about. What about the kids? You can't possibly be against it because this is to stop a certain type of, shall we say, exotic image. And to stop the abuse of minors, that kind of thing. Of course, you're not supposed to stand against that, but the implications of what's actually going on with that are quite interesting, because it's often said that the slippery slope is a fallacy as an argument, and it can be. It absolutely can be if you take it too far, but this is not really being taken too far. This is something with precedent. If you just look at stuff like the Snooping Charter and all those kind of things, Patriot Act, all that sort of stuff. With the Patriot Act, for instance, and various other countries' equivalents, they tend to be they start off by going, oh, it's against terrorism. It's only going to be used to prevent terrorism. Then the definition of terrorism gets kind of redefined and shifted and moved along, and that's happened plenty of times in the past, because then it goes from being terrorism to being domestic terrorism to being kind of, I don't know, anti-capitalist. If you've got any complaints about capitalism or the or government or certain people in government or that kind of thing. And a lot of this language has been bandied around actually by the people that are actually running these kind of things, which is fucking scary. The British government, for instance, has been kind of doing anti-protest laws, basically saying it's got to be quiet because a protest is supposed to be not to have inconvenience to anybody around. You can go protest, but it's got to be over there, out of the way, out of sight and out of earshot, all that kind of stuff. And there has been sort of legislation which has been bandied around talking about kind of like criticism of the government as well, and they'll say, oh, it's just to stop abuse and all that kind of stuff, but you just know it's not going to stop there. It never stops there. So when it comes to kind of like Apple and stuff like that, it's like, where does that line get stopped, and how readily would it be moved? And that's always the $1 million question. Is kind of, what does it take to motivate them to actually kind of like move this thing along? Is it going to be something very trivial next? And it is absolutely going to be something like that, whether it be of anti-government propaganda, or if it's just anti-government kind of activism. If you make a joke out of context, will that be picked up by this and you get reported? These things never stay where they were intended to be, and that's the thing. Good evening, Minty. And it's like it's absolutely frigging insane, this kind of thing. And if you don't think that it's actually the case that it would actually move along, it most certainly will, and it has done. The Guardian has a report. The headline is revealed: anti-terror snooping law used for fly tippers and parking. Now, this basically, I think it's RIPA, R-I-P-A. There's this kind of software that, or at least a program which they gather information from, and councils have been allowed access to this in order to chase up certain things like fly tipping or illegal parking and all those kind of things. These small things which should not be dealt with in such a massively intrusive way. I mean, that is frigging terrifying when they sort of go, well, it's not quite, this person's breaking the law. Like I say, the definition of what is breaking the law is changing, especially when it comes to regards to criticism of the government or any other kind of behaviour. And it's one of those things I kind of look at with great scepticism when you see they go, wait, it's only about the children, this one's for this, or this is anti-terrorist, or this is kind of like this extreme behaviour over here is what we're looking at. It never, ever, ever stops there, and that's kind of one of those scary things. I think it is. Technical issues just got in, says Minty. Glad you made it. What's the topic of chat here? I've just been talking about a few things of tech censorship and all that kind of stuff, and abuse of surveillance laws, funny enough. What with Apple's behaviour with their searching through your photos, trying to look for images they deem to be dodgy. This is a topic of free speech, that is quite right. It's free speech and privacy, and those two things are things that I have spoken about on quite a few occasions, actually, because I think all of that sort of kind of comes into the sort of realm of censorship and those kind of things. Certain liberal or even libertarian kind of concerns. And when I say libertarian, I ain't talking about the kind of like extreme sort of end of libertarianism. There are certain aspects of libertarianism which are, perfectly rational, but people tend to take it a little bit far when you get like the kind of sovereign citizens. That's the word. Oh, they're interesting folks, the sovereign citizens. Good Lord. We just had a bunch of people up in Scotland take over Edinburgh Castle. I haven't seen the update of that. I don't know if any of you saw that. Some people kind of they walked into Edinburgh Castle and then took over part of it, and have been claiming that they're going by the law as is laid down in the Magna Carta, the only law, except for as I understand it, the Magna Carta has nothing to do with Scotland. So, this is the calibre of people that you're actually kind of talking about when you come to sovereign citizens. Kent Hovind, I believe, considers himself a sovereign citizen, and he got, was it 6 years or something like that in prison for avoiding taxes. He's going, show me where it's written down in the law, and the judge is like, it's here, here, and here. Hope you enjoy your striped pyjamas, dude. People have no idea what's going on around them. We live in a weird society these days, particularly. There is a massive bombardment of information that goes on around us. People in the past worked very, very hard, but it was a very different kind of hard. these days, and I'd say particularly in America, because working laws are very different over in America. You've got people who have to, do 2 or 3 jobs just to keep a roof over their head. And that means you haven't got much time to be worrying about all that kind of stuff. It's one of those things that happens in the background. You haven't got time to be the activist. You haven't got time or the energy to be kind of investing yourself in sort of digging through all that stuff. Whatever teeny tiny little amount of time that you have granted to you is usually going to be eating and sleeping. Barely any time for your family in some cases, if you've been looking at some of the cases in America at the moment. What is it now? Nabisco, the guys that do Oreo, and there's the miners and several other instances of companies going, right, okay, you're going to be working X amount of overtime at the same rate, so there's no bonus for overtime. You're going to be working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, and in one case it was like for 5 months solid, and it was crazy. I don't know how more people just didn't keel over. Apparently some people actually did. And that's how the system, to some degree, actually keeps you less active in politics and stuff like that. It's very difficult, for your average citizen, apart from anything else, because you've got to do a lot of work to actually kind of figure everything out. Vet your sources, all that kind of stuff. So when you see a lot of these people who are kind of spouting disinformation, it's because they tend to go to one source, either out of laziness or out of just forced convenience, and it's kind of crazy. So it's pretty horrible. Oh God, don't even get me started on that stuff, Adam. It's kind of crazy. Kent Hovind, was that Fundy? Yes, Kent Hovind is an evangelical type preacher who is a young earth creationist, and a really extreme one at that. I mean, if you're a young earth creationist, you're pretty extreme anyway. But he is a young earth creationist who runs a ministry that advocates that, kind of like the earth is like 4,000 to 6,000 years old. Dinosaurs lived with man. Noah's flood was absolutely unequivocally true. It happened. Genesis is 100% accurate. But his opinions don't just go from that stuff. It goes into kind of like all sorts of really strange and quite repugnant areas in some respects. He's not a nice guy. He's kind of smug and nasty, in my opinion. Oh dear. Oh dear. I'm not even going to say that on the stream. It's right about there. Hang on. Let's get that one there. I'm not going to say that one. Kind of beginning to sound what like the Matrix was. Yes. It's kind of funny, isn't it, really? I mean, these days our lives are so dominated by work. I'm relatively lucky. I mean, what I was doing in my previous jobs and stuff, as much as I complain about my current job, I do get free time, which is kind of important. But we've got all these labour-saving devices and all that kind of stuff, but you're having to work every minute. God sends in many respects. It's a weird world. Not a terribly nice one. Guess he was a fan of Doug McClure. Yes. What pill would you take? The cyanide one. Some people go, "Oh, you're afraid of dying," and I can. So you get that with like the Kent Hovinds and stuff, because one of the things I did, a lot of emotional blackmail goes on with these people. It's aren't you afraid of dying and go to hell? It's like kind of like, just finish me off now. It's not great. Genesis is not 100% accurate. It's a rewrite of a book. There's various different origins for a lot of these stories. My funniest, the claim that Kent Hovind makes, which is the most funny, is that the Grand Canyon was carved by the Great Flood. and it's so weird. It's like really, really weird. It's like that's not how water works. Especially when you look at the shape of like the Grand Canyon, it's like goes like, you know, it's like, what did the water change several different directions in several occasions? That kind of stuff. It's kind of strange. If Genesis is 100% accurate, why don't snakes talk? Well, you see, what it is that snakes are naturally inclined towards being librarians. It's partly why their shape is like it is. They make great bookmarks. So all they're doing is going, shh. That's why. And that is actually the kind of level of argument that you get from someone like Hovind. Oh dear. Some of these guys are just incredible. I was having a look at the BBFC's, because BBC now got their annual report and accounts thing up for 2020, and it's one of those things. It's like, it sounds really, really boring. It's actually not a bad read. It's kind of information as to sort of where they are and all that kind of stuff. So it's worth having a look. If you go to the BBFC website, you can actually sort of download this thing and have a look. I think it got darker. There we go. Yeah, I'll live with the glare. So they basically, in this thing, they kind of like, they've been talking about all the various bits of kind of changes that have happened over the last year, and summarize, kind of like where things are at with rating U, PG, 12A, 15, 18, and the lesser known R18. Video games, all that kind of stuff. So it's actually worth a read, having a look and seeing what's going on. Because one of the things that was really kind of picked up on earlier on in the year was that Empire Strikes Back went from being a U to being a PG. And, I've always kind of thought, it shouldn't be a U. It is very solidly a PG rather than a U. But at the time that it was released, the classification kind of limits were very, very different. So what was PG is now generally quite often like a 12 or a 12A. So when you look at stuff like Indiana Jones, and I think it was Temple of Doom was another one that got upgraded from PG to 12 on home entertainment, and some people really kind of started to sound like they were losing their shit about it. It's kind of an odd thing, really, because I'm looking at it going, no, it kind of makes sense, because at the time that was originally released, it didn't really sit. There was no 12 category for it to sit in. That film was one of the ones, I think, that really kind of pushed for that thing to actually sort of appear. But before it did appear, then PG was the one for it to go to. And parental guidance is what PG means. And the idea being that parents actually kind of look at and review it and check it out and all that kind of stuff before the kids watch it. Now, obviously, not all parents do that. I wonder how many do. If I had a kid, I'd be kind of watching as many films with them as possible, and even introducing them to stuff which is above their age category at some point. But kind of when they're ready for it, I wouldn't sit down a 8-year-old and make them watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre, for instance. You could happily do it with like a 2 or a 3-year-old because they wouldn't really understand it. But isn't that the funny thing though? Really young kids obviously can't appreciate what's going on with these kind of films, and so it's just moving images to them. It's only when you start understanding context that the things become potentially upsetting. Oh dear. You may not be a fan, but I'd recommend watching Ricky Gervais's stand-up act on Genesis. Actually, I like Ricky Gervais's stand-up. I'm just not a fan of his scripted performances, shall we say. I kind of like TV roles and stuff like that. But I think he's a very, very funny guy as a stand-up. I have actually seen that one on Genesis. It was very, very funny. First, Star Wars had an audible neck snap, a bloody arm chop, Charred Corpses, hardcore for a U. Yes, and Empire Strikes Back, I would say another hand chopping and a decapitation. So yes, pretty hard for a U. But yeah, I was kind of having a bit of a look through it anyway. Let's see what did. So let's have a quick look for it. So some of the points. This is just sort of the summation page. That's actually kind of on there. What I'll do is I'll put that into the chat so you guys can have a bit of a look at some point. This is the page that the BBFC have their annual report come from. It's where it links from. It says, for the first time in its 100-year history, BBFC classified theatrical content from home as remote working became the norm for the UK. Why is that a big deal? Well, the BBFC, apart from anything else, just kind of like doing business as usual, as most people did up until the pandemic started, had a bit of an ethos that they should be watching it in the same context that other people would, which I think it's always a bit of a misnomer with them, because they don't watch it en masse in the same way that you would watch it in a cinema. They're just sat in a cinema type environment and with a few other people, but not like kind of like a full auditorium and kind of an audience of people who would be normal people watching these things. So they make a big deal about that, but I kind of like go here. Organisation pivoted outreach work to support parents' home learning with their children. So now the BBFC's in your education. Could be worse, people, but I found that a kind of an interesting one for them to be making kind of strides into. I guess it makes sense in terms of what they do and all that kind of stuff, but yeah. They classified 4,033 video submissions, 2,310 online submissions, i.e. kind of like website-based content, 619 theatrical films since during 2020, which I kind of go, what's this, 619 films go out? Holy crap. And apparently 15 was the most popular age rating for theatrical and online submissions, which is interesting really, because several of the films that I've seen that have had cuts by the BBFC have been done because the distributors wanted a 15 rating. Funny enough, the film that we're actually going to be watching in a little while, the guy that got prosecuted for that was prosecuted for a minute's worth of footage that the BBFC didn't approve of. Otherwise it'd have been alright. I don't know what the minute was, but I suspect it's probably the more explicit boobs and blood kind of stuff. Did it have a disemboweling as well? With the you could say that happened with the prequels. Darth Maul, yes, he gets cut in half. It's a very bloodless one. It's kind of funny. The BBFC particularly, well, not just the BBFC, censors in general can handle some pretty gratuitous violence as long as there's very little blood. The MPAA are massive on that. Got jailed, didn't he? Yes, he did. And it was, it's fucking petty for 1 minute. Apparently, I think he was warned about it, and then he just went ahead and kind of released it, or showed it. And I think it was due to either a video fair or a screening at something like Prince Charles Theatre Cinema in Leicester Square. Something like that, that he got kind of arrested in. It's not the first time people have been arrested for showing films in cinemas. GLC kind of like bust a few heads along the way, particularly in Soho. I think Andy Warhol's Flesh, for one, was one of those films that got raided, despite the censor at the time, John Trevelyan, having said, no, you'll be fine with this. We don't consider it to be obscene. The DPP kind of thought differently. Problem with movies today is lack of blood. Rossatron, I don't know, Rossatron did a great video about it. They're afraid to do that because, I mean, one of the things is there's always this commercial pressure when it comes to releasing films. When it comes to films that are supposed to be sort of aimed at kind of like an adult audience, they don't want to kind of marginalise, if you like, the audience, which is like 15 and below, anything from 12 to 15. So they try to sort of like, or even up to like kind of 17, I should say. So they try to kind of like knock it back a bit to make it a little bit more acceptable, so they got a bigger chance of getting money back. That's as much to do with the capitalist kind of pressures on studios, and not to say the least, greed, rather than giving the film some semblance of integrity, they will happily kind of sell it down the river just or at least ruin it a bit just to get a bit more money. Do you think the SJWs would like this movie, Glenn? Well, it depends on the SJW, doesn't it? This film, it is one of those films that you could apply the word misogynistic to in some kind of sense. And although I've said it before, I'll say it again, just to be very clear on this occasion. Just because a film deals with misogynistic kind of imagery, ideas, and even sort of point of view, doesn't mean that it is in and of itself that. Sometimes it's it's like a perspective thing that actually kind of pushes it that way. It's like the character's kind of view of the world, which is what you can quite happily sort of look at and go, yeah, it's misogynistic, but it's making a point, it's doing something, it's how the story operates, it's how the story is told, without it actually saying this is a good idea and that kind of stuff. I think one of the most negatively misogynistic films that I've seen was probably New York Ripper. Is definitely right up there. That's one of those films that seems to have a real kind of sense of spite towards women, and it's not necessarily just in service of the story. And I don't think it's necessarily because it's entirely it's certainly not uniformly the killer's point of view, that story. So, I mean, Lucio Fulci has certainly had his kind of run-ins, and Catriona MacColl shut him down on several occasions when he tried to be a bastard to her, because he was apparently a bit of a bastard in general to women. But MacColl certainly kind of like wouldn't take any of that nonsense from him. Quite a remarkable woman, as far as I can tell. Lucio Fulci loves women. He loves seeing them sliced up in films. A lot of the films that he's done, most of them, I say most of them, many of them, it's a very kind of passive sort of thing. New York Ripper feels different. That is a film that really does feel very, very spiteful. It's not an enjoyable film as far as I'm concerned. I know there's a lot of fans out there of it. Fulci's just a very, very odd guy. Do you think Fulci was a bastard because he was a Catholic? No, he's a bastard just because he's a bit of a bastard. I don't think there was any religious causation for how he was. I think he was just... I think it's probably just partly to do with where he came from, maybe. I don't know. But he was certainly very difficult to work with. I remember reading about some people slating Lynch for showing the abuse that Laura Palmer was the victim of, but he counted that with it had to be shown to show her struggle. Yeah, absolutely. You don't get rid of violence by hiding away from it. Confronting it on an emotional level, and actually kind of trying to understand that this stuff does happen, and trying to figure out why it happens is one of those things that you need to do. You absolutely need to do. Yeah. Lynch is not someone I could call misogynistic in the slightest, though a lot of violence happens to women in his films. You never really you're never at all encouraged to enjoy that. It's always how those female characters kind of react in the face of that violence, which is what's important. Fulci being an a-hole, nothing new there. No, he was a bit of a diva, to say the least. You know, he's one of those guys that would have very kind of, he'd go off a big kind of queenie hissy fits all the time. Oh dear. Fulci was critical of the church, if anything. He was also politically communist, apparently swayed that way as well. I did not know that. I've always thought he's had an interesting relationship with kind of like supernatural sort of stuff. You know, when you look at the kind of context of what he sort of, how he deals with those kind of subject matters. Not that he really deals with it in any great detail, except for maybe in something like, well, vaguely even in that. Don't Torture a Duckling. There's all those supernatural elements that are in those films, at least kind of like implied supernatural elements. So there is a kind of criticism of the church in that. It's not terribly deep. I mean, Fulci, for the most part, never really struck me as a particularly nuanced filmmaker in terms of the stories. The stories are very kind of upfront. There wasn't an awful lot of undercurrent within them. Hello, I'm back. Apparently I had a little bit of a dropout. Not quite sure what's going on there, but there you go. I have no idea how much we've missed, but what are you going to do? Is everybody okay in chat? Are we all connected? Let me just... checking my chat. That is chat. Not fat. Good. Yeah, apologies for that for whatever reason. Yeah, it was a little bit of a dropout there. Blue Iris, don't worry about it. We are back. I don't know how much I missed, but I've probably been rambling for 5 minutes and just been talking to myself. So I'm looking at my OBS at the moment. I should be checking that other screen as well. Surely Lynch was trying to be inclusive rather than racist. On what was that? I'm going to have to check what... Do you think it's racist to portray races and cultures that are not your own in a film? Is Lynch guilty of that in Twin Peaks, given he had Native American characters? The Native American characters within that series were played by Native Americans. And Lynch is a particularly sensitive director when it comes to working with his cast. And I don't think it's improper for someone to write about another culture. If you've got a cast member who goes, what the hell is this? This is completely wrong. You'd be well advised to sort of listen to them, I think, is one of those things that you should do. And I think that's just a case of being, if you want to be honest and, I don't know, have integrity when it comes to your writing, it's worth consulting with people that you are writing about, at least kind of some kind of representative of the culture that you're writing about. I think that will likely make your work a lot better and certainly help to sidestep any kind of ridiculous preconceptions that you may make that you don't realise are ridiculous. I think that's one of the things which would be kind of important to do. And I don't think that Lynch would ever presume to be kind of like speak for an entire race. And it's kind of funny, though. You look at the characters within something like Twin Peaks. There are a lot of very kind of different people that are represented within Twin Peaks. But every character is a sort of heightened kind of character. They're these sort of like TV world type characters anyway. And, you can absolutely read Twin Peaks as being kind of like very meta on kind of like the idea of the world of TV. That there is this very almost self-conscious kind of TV world that is going on. I think when somebody does, it was rather spuriously known as soap noir, which, to some degree I kind of look at it and I kind of go, it's not necessarily a bad description. The more you think about it and more you think about the content of the story and the point of it all, yeah. But when it comes to like characters like Hawk and so on, I think he treated those characters with respect, and I think that's particularly true in the Return as well. Actually, the Return where Hawk is in it and he's talking to the log lady is one of the most moving moments in TV that I've ever seen. Because the log lady, Catherine Coulson, she was actually dying. The log lady in that series, she's got a breathing tube on, and I think that was actually how she was. A bunch of the older actors were obviously very frail, and she was on her way out at that point. And there's a point where Deputy Hawk gets to sort of say our goodbye to the character, and damn, it's very powerful. Even out of context of Catherine Coulson's death, that happened very shortly after that. I think it was. I don't think she lived long enough to actually see the series get released. Soap noir, not heard that before. Yeah, it's an interesting little phrase. I always thought it was a little bit trite when I first heard it, and then I kind of grew to like it actually. Right, so what I'm going to say is get yourselves ready with the film. The link should be in the description. It's not the greatest copy, but it should do just fine for what we're doing. I'll put it in the chat as well. Yeah, Catherine Coulson was very, very ill at that stage. It was such a shame. It was such a shame because Catherine Coulson always struck me as an absolute darling of a person. Wherever you saw her interviewed and stuff, just one of the friendliest, peppiest, most enthusiastic people that you can possibly know. And you can absolutely see why someone like David Lynch just adored working with her. And that was the nice thing with David Lynch. He's always loved to work with his circle of friends. Obviously, that's had to change over the years a bit as some have dropped in and out and all that kind of stuff. I was always a little disappointed Michael Ontkean didn't return for the Return series, but he had his reasons, and it's a bit confusing as to entirely why it was. But yeah, he never got around to it, unfortunately. But his replacement was very good. Well, the Blu-ray match up timing-wise, I have no idea. I have no idea. This is clearly a VHS rip, so possibly not. So what do you think about doing this hour's chat before the show? It's kind of interesting as long as I can find something to actually talk about. Last week and this week haven't been too bad. It's probably getting my brain working again a bit as well, which seems to be happening. I'm writing now, obviously. I did the Carriers review the other week. I'm most of the way through the current review, which is Blue Sunshine. And I'm looking forward to doing something else. And I'd do a Francophile, but I've got to figure out how the hell it is. Well, title sequences and all that kind of stuff. It's proven to be a little bit of a pain in the ass. I love the hybrid of a chat and a watch along. Yeah, there was some kind of like, oh, I want to do the Ramblaholics, and I was like, I know some of you really love the watch alongs, and other people kind of prefer the Ramblaholics, and well, that is a kill two birds with one stone. It does mean that we probably will not do or at least less likely to do a double bill, but that's okay. Speaking of writing and completed your first draft, well done, congratulations. It's always an achievement. I wish I could get my ass on my started on my new book. I wish I could get that sorted. It's a big job, so much to do if I'm going to approach that, to the point that I kind of look at it and go, if I could get a year off just to get things sort of started. Bloody Moon watch along. Well, tell you what, if you want to do it, we can do Bloody Moon next week. I know not everybody likes the Jess Franco, but Bloody Moon is just a riot. We've done it before, but it'd be fun to do again. Yeah. Right, so we will get started in about 7 minutes ish. We'll crack on from 9 o'clock onwards, and we'll get started with this rather interesting film. Certainly one that stands in an interesting place within the Video Nasties oeuvre. And it's one of the ones that is incredibly mean-spirited feeling. This is a movie that is really it really kind of puts you through the ringer. There's only a few of the films that really sort of do that. I Spit on Your Grave does that. Cannibal Holocaust, not so much, but certainly can do. But I don't find Cannibal Holocaust particularly upsetting in terms of depression. Don't Go in the House is another one which is very, very similar to this. And you can kind of understand to some degree, why people kind of had a problem with some of these movies. Funny enough, I was just listening to the BBFC podcast. They do a podcast which you can actually go along to. And they've got the director of the film Censor, which I'm still looking forward to seeing, talking about this stuff. And it's kind of fun because, the BBFC is like, well, this is essentially a film that kind of talks about us to some extent. So it was an interesting conversation. Definitely worth checking out. Actually, they've got a few podcasts on there which are definitely worth checking out. BBFC, for kind of like for better or for worse, are an interesting organisation. Nightmare in a Damaged Brain. What's not to like? The title is awesome. It was certainly one of those video nasties that really kind of it really drags you through the mill emotionally, and not because it's like particularly overwrought, but it does that whole thing of being kind of like setting itself in the head of a very distressing character who sees the world in a very kind of perverse, twisted, violent way. And there's a few films, I guess, like I say, Don't Go in the House, Driller Killer to an extent as well. It's another one that does that kind of stuff. And it can make it like a real sort of emotional kind of mill to put yourself through. It ain't a feel-good movie, let's put it that way. You're writing horror thriller. There you go. Got lots of writers, which is very good. I'm glad people do. I wish I could get more done. Especially if I could get this fucking book that I keep planning. If I could get that done, that'd be great. I've got loads and loads and loads of it written. In fact, actually, some of the parts of it were in the VHS Nasty, the Video Nasties book. For those who haven't seen it. So I had a few submissions in this book. So I got a few reviews and stuff in there, and a couple of articles. It's a big ass book. So some of my book is in there. I did tell him when I put it, when I submitted him that I do reserve the right to actually kind of rejig the stuff it's in that I've submitted to kind of do it, to redo it as a book of my own. You wish you could get Morden. Oh, Morden, what a terrible goddamn film. I don't know who saw the horrible reviews extended review thing. It was like about 3 3/4 hours long. A beginner's guide to extreme movies or disturbing movies. Morden was one of them, and it's like I did have the opportunity to do that review myself, and it's like kind of like I'm not the person to review it. Do you think if I worked really hard, I could be the best of David Cronenberg with mixed with the best of Walt Disney? It's very hard for me to say, but aim high is what I would say. I don't really know your writing, Byron. But it is a case of you've got to just keep plugging away at it and do it because you like doing it. Don't do it because you feel you have to. And who knows where you'll end up. Who knows where you'll end up. Writing isn't something that everybody's really, really, really good at, but it doesn't mean you should stop. Dancing is something that some people are very, very, very good at, but other people's are not. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't bust a move just because you're arthritic and 80, for instance. You do it because you want to do it. The act is reward in itself. Although don't take that from a publisher. Someone wants to be a publisher, they should pay you for your fucking work. That's the one thing I would say. You do have to do a certain amount of kind of like shall we say charity work, just to kind of get your hand in and get your kind of like experience up and all that kind of stuff to get published to start with. But it's not a situation that you should ever think is a permanent one. There's too many publishers think that is the case, especially when it comes to music and video creation and all that kind of stuff. But there you go. Okay, we're going to get started with the movie in a moment. I'm just going to... I should grab a second bottle, and then we'll look at getting going. Okay. Oh, we're still connected. We look like we're still connected. That's very, very good. That is good news. I feel like you have to enjoy writing to do it. Yes. I think to get the best writing you do. You can write when you don't want to, but you tend to find that your writing is not that. And it becomes full of effort. Not the right kind of effort either. It feels laboured. And that's not good. So why my writing has slowed down so much over the last year, and I'm just picking back up again. I needed that bit of time away, I think. Probably best not with me, Byron. I don't have a lot of time to to read an awful lot of people's stuff, but feel free to put it into the Ramblaholics and talk to various people about that sort of stuff, particularly writer types that may have a bit more time than I tend to have. It's not me kind of going, I don't want to read your stuff. It's just I never get the time to, or I'm not in the mental place to kind of like read the stuff, and it can be a little uncomfortable when it's like people I'm friendly with. In that I kind of start worrying about your feelings. That is one of the reasons why I try not to kind of get friendly with too many directors and filmmakers, Because if I do have to criticise their work, that can be an uncomfortable place to be. Level of drafting is based on what I am working on, the type. Yeah, absolutely. Right, okay, folks. Stand by. We are going to go. We're going to go on count of 5 and go on go. So we will go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. I like criticism as long as it's constructive. Yeah. It's kind of why I moved away from various different types of reviews. And now I tend to be kind of like art form sort of review. So I'm kind of I'm looking at stuff a lot more constructively rather than just destructively. There's negative, kind of comments on certain things, but that's kind of the nature. It should be a drinking game in this, is how many times he kind of like screams at the camera. Believe me, there's enough times that I kind of look at my writing, even today, and sort of go, God, that was awful. Especially when I tried to record it, and I've been very, shall I say, verbose. So I see this guy, it looks like he's kind of in a child's bed, doesn't it? That's the thing with this fucking movie is so screamy. That image of the girl's kind of like head in the bottom of the bed is one of those that I saw photos of years and years and years before I saw this movie. It was just one of those wonderfully kind of evocative kind of images. I think it was Splatter Movies, that's the one. Let me see if I can get that out there without too much trouble. I really need to get a better copy of this. This is a rough as fuck copy. There's images of this film in here, and I remember seeing them at the time. Was quite evocative. I think I figured out why my internet's playing up a little bit today. We had some work done on it. Virgin have been expanding their network or replacing cables or something like that, and I don't think all the issues have been entirely sorted out. Yeah, it happens. I mean, the thing is, writing's tricky because you're writing what is in your head sometimes, and it doesn't translate to human. And it does help if you got someone to have a look over that stuff. And I wish I could do more of it for people, but it's just apart from anything else, if I open up that door, I'm just going to be a free script consultant for a lot of people, and that would not figure out very well. Wasn't that image used in the tabloids during the Nasty era? Yes, I believe it was. That's a very good book. My brother has a much nicer copy, but there's lots of really cool stuff going on in there. One of the first images I've really seen of like Dawn of the Dead was in that. So, for instance. Interesting. See, we've had a hell of an opening to this movie, haven't we, really? It's like, it is one of these films, it's less jump scare than it is a lot of very grating sound and him screaming at the camera. And though the actor didn't really do a lot of films, I think he did one film after this. His performance in this is, shall we say, committed. No pun intended. But he is so kind of like literally screamingly mad that he really does kind of like well, the whole thing just drags on your raw nerve ends. Just popping in for a second tonight. I thought I'd have. I've had a busy day cleaning and sorting out your flat. All right, Richard, you come and go as you will. Hope you got what you needed to get done. Really want to tidy up in here. There's certain aspects of this being like a kind of extreme version of Halloween. Just with a much shittier attitude. And I think that's one of the things that got this film into a lot of trouble, is less so than the... It's like this. Less so than the gore that's in this film. The atmosphere of this film is very dour, to say the least. It is a unpleasant feeling film, to say the least. And you can understand why someone was particularly not a horror film fan, why they potentially would have a problem with this film. There's a PDF that you could download years ago, scans the articles and newspapers in the 80s. Yes, it's still around. It's on bookofthedead.com. It's very good. John. Hello, John. We are currently at 6 minutes and coming up to 45 seconds. Good to see you, man. God, this smug little bastard. It's one of the things that always stands out in this film. That kid is... Jesus Christ. It's like Jake Lloyd on Barbiturates. As the kid in... I don't know what drugs he was doing, but... as the kid in Star Wars. Ooh. This sort of stuff is always one of the things that the BBC have problems with. I think they had difficulties with this scene in particular. You've got kinky sex going on, and what is about to be a fairly brutal murder. One of the things that was always plagued this film was Tom Savini was very lightly involved with this film. To the point, because his involvement, the director actually claimed that Tom Savini was responsible for the effects, but plenty of other people who were involved with the film kind of like said no, including Tom Savini himself. Tom Savini sort of said he was just really an advisor to this movie. Well, just more screamy. Schizophrenia. Yes. Shame to say, the first copy I saw of this was a Halloween edition bought in the first days of Poundland. It's remarkable it got any kind of release at all. I think the British cut is still a cut copy. I think. If Simon was here, he'd be able to put me right on that, I'm sure. for all you headphone users out here, the sound of beer opening. There we go. Yeah, it was a bit kinky, that scene, wasn't it? That scene, although it kind of like later on in the film when it's sort of revisited, because it's a scene that's revisited several times throughout this film. There's a behind-the-scenes photo of Tom Savini directing the kid how to operate the axe. Hello, Zammy. Unhinged is an interesting little film in some respects. I mean, it's boring as hell, to be honest with you, but yeah, it's one of those films that sort of straddled a moderate budget with an incredibly low budget and very low rent acting in it. You bought the first 3 Hellraisers in the early day of Poundland. Well, I just got the first 3 on, like I showed you last week, got the Arrow Blu-ray box set of the first 3. I started watching the first one the other night, actually. Didn't get all the way through because I was a bit tired, but the commentary's interesting. Schizophrenia now. His condition has modified. Yeah, I definitely think my internet's a little bit screwy today. Oh well. The original cut of this was the American R-rated, I believe. There's been several different versions of this film, but the BBFC demanded extra cuts on top of that. Obviously, pre-cert, I'm not entirely sure. I think that was a heavier cut version. One of the things is people don't always realise that the pre-certs don't necessarily mean they were uncut. It just means they didn't go through the BBFC. Often the distributors would cut them as best they could. And a good example of that is the Boogeyman 2 cassette I've got, which is very heavily cut for such a relatively mild film. It's good to see Poundland didn't have too much taste, though, as to not actually sell this film. Isn't it weird, these kind of this whole sort of scenario that we're seeing here when going in the sex club? I mean, there's just something about the idea of going, yeah, I'm bored, I'm going to go out for a wank. That seems just weird. But I guess, different. Well, I was going to say different strokes for different folks, but it'd be probably slightly inappropriate. Why is this making you think of Ren and Stimpy? I've got no idea. He's interestingly played, this character, though. I don't know if it was just he didn't get much in the way of roles after this because of this film, or whether it's just because he didn't go out there that much because of it. I can imagine this film being something of a career killer. Slight drop again there. Yeah, I apologise. It's the internet around here has taken a bit of a knock over the last couple of days because they're doing work on the lines. I think the phone booth scene might have been one of the cuts from the preset. Possibly. It'd be interesting to get hold of the preset and see. Didn't he become a shaman? I have no idea. God, this film's sleazy as fuck, isn't it? Unhinged. I think it's quite good myself. It's it's an odd one. It's an odd one. It has something of the Andy Milligan about it. You might have a copy of the preset in the loft. Oh, wow. Okay. I'd love to have, the full collection of presets, but I ain't spending hundreds and hundreds of quid on a single cassette. I've reshuffled the collection on the top there. Now I've got Conquest, The Hills of Eyes, Bloody Moon. That's a outrageous fake, that cassette. Kind of ripped off, but it looks the part. And Communion. We are currently at 18 minutes and 20 seconds. Just coming up to. Never one I was bored by when I first saw it back in the 80s. Yeah, it's one I think you have to put a certain amount of effort in to sit through. Has some interesting aspects with the whole kind of matriarchal kind of thing going on. It's kind of interesting. Fleshpot on 42nd Street is a great Andy Milligan film. Just found out the DVD box set I have is going for $135 on Amazon. It's like that book, the Freedom and Censorship in the Media, the book on the video Nasties. That is worth a lot of money now. I think I picked it up for about £45, £50, and now it's like worth over 500. I think it only ever had one print run. Funny thing is, I got that copy from an American library. They sold on the old stock, and I picked it up on, like, I don't know, it's $8 or something like that. One of the video nasties I always found very, very difficult to get hold of was the Werewolf and the Yeti. There has been disc releases of it since, and I don't think there's a current one, but getting hold of the VHS, the British VHS, is incredibly hard. The interesting thing with this scene is you got these two, and they seem like a nice couple. Seem to be enjoying themselves. Seem to be quite an attractive couple in terms of the story and all that sort of stuff. And then when they get home, it's like this just nightmare brat. John A. Russo's books are going for much cheaper lately. There have been a few reprints. I love how you love his work so much, John. I was like, for me, wow. I struggle. But then, I'm a big Jess Franco fan, so seen a lot of his films actually sort of coming out now. Be interesting to see how much some of my VHS would go for now, actually. It's the only problem with the retro collector's market is it's been kind of it's kind of artificially inflated by a more casual market, unfortunately. Because under most circumstances, an 30 or 40 odd year old cassette, video cassette would be like kind of more or less worthless, but now it's like, yeah, if it's on a video nasties list, it's probably worth something. Now, funny enough, films that you would expect to be more expensive, like The Evil Dead, are actually fairly reasonable. It's films like Jess Franco's films are particularly expensive because they weren't printed so much, so they're actually physically rarer. That's your kind of bar, beer, and sad country tunes. It's the thing that's always made me laugh about the country and western scene. It does have that very hokey kind of cliche sort of thing going on. Mine is the friendly channel on YouTube. Well, I try to keep it friendly. Don't see a point in being an asshole. No, certainly not to my viewers. There's a few directors might kind of say that I am an asshole, and a few directors that have said I'm an asshole, so... I always try to be fair with my commentary and criticism, though. See, there's a style of house decoration that you don't see much these days, where they take slices of stone and kind of stick it to the wall, like clad the wall with it on the outside. Try to make it look like a dry stone wall type thing, but it always looks very artificial. You can actually get holidays going up, like kind of up north, and building dry stone walls, or repairing dry stone walls. Very specific type of skill. But my friend from Ireland, he goes like digging peat in the bogs with his family. So that's the family outing. It is interesting how this the killer in this. Oh, that's nasty. It's funny how the killer in this goes from being very imposing and very threatening to utterly pathetic. I think it's a hell of a performance in some respects. And this seems like another one of those scenes that the BBSE would have had a real problem with. And not only is there a very close-up detail of a throat cutting, there's also this very sexual use of the knife. It's not frenzied, it's almost intimate. It's kind of weird. Go on, internets. Probably had another little drop out then. Bloody virgin. Still, I guess the work has to be done. Next film fair in London, the 16th of October, Conway Hall. Or is that like a film sellers kind of fair? Recently bought the Blu-ray of When a Stranger Calls. Haven't seen it for years. I haven't seen that. Mrs. Doyle was amazing. It's a must if you like what we like, Glenn. Tons of VHS, beta, DVD, hard to get stuff. Film fair is amazing. I might have a look at that then. Okay. Shove that into Google. Remakes are terrible. Not all of them. Just the pointless ones. One does wonder if you could get away with remaking this film. Can you imagine this film like kind of like really sort of high quality sound and just to get all those blood curdling screams really kind of ringing through your head? It's the most annoying kid in the world. And there's plenty of really annoying kid characters in films, but this one particularly takes the biscuit. Well, there's Invasion of the Body Snatchers remake in 1973. Or was it 78, I think it was. Remake of The Crazies was pretty good. One could argue that the Wizard of Oz, if you're into that type of film. Always amuses me that there was a remake of Birth of a Nation as well. Thank you, Blue Iris. Oh, John, you contrarian, you. I thought the 93 one was alright. But it is interesting seeing those films in context of the different ideas that they would approach. The 78 one is my favourite by a long shot, though. Second Sight doing some awesome limited edition Blu-ray releases. Think there could be serious competition for Arrow very soon. You can always hope. God, this fucking kid. One of the things that does make you question the motivation of both the killer and the kid is, this the whole idea of that the parental types having sex is somehow a problem. You know, it's disturbing, and to an extent you could argue that it is, but they take it to the nth degree, so to speak. And it's like, when you see this couple, and they're quite normal, they're not extreme or nothing, and to think that that's his kind of reaction is he just becomes an attention-seeking little bastard just makes you hate that character that little bit more. A dog with a man's face is creepy. Yes, it is. There's a lot of creepy stuff in that film. The Blob remake is very good too. Yes, I love the Blob remake. Better than the original. The original has its moments, but it was kind of watered down because of the... it was sort of just post-Hays Code. So a lot of the filmmakers were being very cagey about having extreme violence. It's only really the Herschel Gordon Lewis's and that kind of filmmaker that was making the really gnarly stuff. Tell us what happened, and why does it smell of tomato ketchup around here? I loved Nimoy in Body Snatchers. I thought it was a good turn. It's a shame he got so kind of typecast as Spock, really. Is that Tommy Chong? He's got that look, hasn't he? But I like the character. It seems to be a genuinely likable character. I guess we're supposed to feel like the mother's being very irresponsible to some respect in kind of spending time away from him. And it's always kind of like bugs me slightly because that's that kid deserves to be kind of spent some time away from. There was another remake with Nicole Kidman. Oh, John. Yeah, your taste amuses me sometimes, but I love you for it, man. That came out when first time I went over to Canada. Remember the billboards of it being up in the square. Down Yonge Street. I enjoy Toronto when I do go. It's funny how most Canadians kind of hate Toronto, but I kind of adore it. I've had good times there. I didn't think much of the Nicole Kidman edition. At least the other versions were trying to do something significantly different. But I've only seen it once, so I couldn't be definitive about it. True Grit remake was good. I'm not a massive Westerns fan, but yeah, it was all right. I haven't seen the original. I think possibly the next film that I'll be watching might be Ichi the Killer, reviewing after this. Potentially, by the way. I was looking at doing Don't Torture a Duckling, but not too sure about that at this point. Did rewatch it the other day, though. I did laugh at the points you're not supposed to laugh, like the finale with his head bouncing off the cliff. Ichi is awesome. It's been a long time since I've watched it, but I thought it was quite a wonderfully perverse film. Kakihara, the bad guy in it, is very entertaining. Actually, the best thing about the film. It's an interesting, really batshit crazy film. Quite perverse in some points, incredibly violent, and quite sadistic. So if those things check all your tick boxes, it's basically manga. That sort of super violent manga. Almost a shining stab on the music there. Yeah. Oh, you're welcome, Minty. Long overdue for me, that one. Although not many people have bothered to watch it, but I ain't too worried. I do what I want. I don't know that one, John. You'll have to send me a link either to the DVD or if it's around somewhere. We'll have to do a podcast or something like that at some point, John, on a couple of films. That'd be fun. I mentioned before I did a podcast for worst date movies, and on a Serbian film. He just contacted me recently. He says, "Have you got the isolated audio from your side?" And I was like, "I've only got the the full recording. I didn't isolate anything, so hopefully it won't cause them too much problems." I was a bit like kind of like kicking myself. Just checking some stuff. Well, YouTube's telling me I've got an excellent connection, but it seems to be a bit intermittent. That does sound interesting, Sammy. Glenn's previously talked about Dark Water before, but I would advise any of you who like J-horror to give it a chance, especially if you haven't seen it. J-horror's interesting, but it is it's almost an acquired taste. It takes a lot of patience, and it helps if you kind of look into do a little bit of research on the sort of mythology that Japan likes, because then stuff starts to make a bit more sense. Because it's usually very low key. It's usually very specific. Things like the Ring films have a kind of like things that it owes to certain parts of Japanese mythology. What I need to do is pin a couple of threads on Ramblaholics, one for like recommended films and one for the obviously the suggestions for what we're doing tonight, that kind of stuff, for watch along stuff. Got to figure all that stuff out. Being far too much of a boomer. Oh, thank you, Adam. I've done a few non-horrors along the way, but they never get much traction, unfortunately. I'd always kind of regret that the summer season stuff I did a few years back never got much love. Such a shame, because I think they're actually some of my best work is in that. The falling down Death Wish comparison was fascinating to do. And I got, BRB 30,000 to thank for that, because he did his Death Wish review, and then I kind of did it as partially a response to that. But I thought it was an interesting, different approach to the film as well. Perhaps I should review Forrest Gump. He really goes for the tormented character, doesn't he, in this? He does that quite well. It has to be said. It's not an uncommitted performance. Perhaps he goes a little too far in some respects, but I appreciate the performance in this. Agreed, Glenn. It's a very subtle genre, but they do get away with a lot more in their films than in the West. They do to a lot of extent. It is funny watching something like Tumbling Doll of Flesh, though, where you've got hardcore pornography and basically torture porn levels of violence, but they still blur out the pubic region, and not because they don't want you to see cock or vagina, but pubes. Something specific in Japanese culture that they don't like pubes. Bruce Willis' Death Wish remake was a letdown. I haven't seen it. Quite frankly, I've given up on Bruce Willis as a performer. He, oh God, this little brat. They say, there's all that thing about videos making you violent and stuff like that. It's just, that kid makes you want to fucking throttle him. Yeah, I was not driven towards the Death Wish remake in the slightest, it has to be said. I kind of get the feeling with Bruce Willis, he's just got to a point. I think he wanted to sort of break into music and leave the film stuff behind. But his music career kind of just died a death, and then nobody would take him seriously. And a lot of people criticise him for his music career, what he did do, like with Return of Bruno. I don't think it was that bad. I've heard a hell of a lot worse. But, it didn't take off and all that kind of stuff, and I think he resented that, and he was in that position. It's like, well, what else do I do than make films? And I kind of get the feeling that's pretty much describes the rest of his career for the most part. I think with the exception of stuff like 12 Monkeys and a few little exceptions, most of the films that he's done, he's just shown no enthusiasm in. I think Glass he looked quite enthusiastic in, which was quite refreshing. But, yeah. Pity it wasn't a great film. You don't show the back of your ankles either in JP. A different culture they have. Yes, they do. It's quite fascinating. Japan is a fascinating country. It is a genuinely fascinating country. So austere and polite in many respects, but also kind of like indulge very heavily in what I can only describe, as kink. It's all framed very oddly. But I would love to visit. Closest I've got is Kowloon. We lived in, as kids, my family lived in Hong Kong for a couple of years. Kowloon was always fascinating. Die Hard is still the greatest action film. Well, it's certainly right up there. Certainly right up there. I do enjoy that film. I don't so much enjoy that is it a Christmas film or not kind of argument, but I love Colour of Night in the erotic thriller thriller genre. Maybe one of Bruce Best's and most interesting roles. And we all love Hudson Hawk. I don't think I can enjoy Hudson Hawk even on an ironic level. It's a deeply strange collection of choices that have been committed to celluloid. I always ask myself every time there's a Bruce Willis films, what was the last time he actually gave a shit about what he was filming? It's unfortunately rare, and that's a shame. Because he used to be such a charismatic guy. Now he's the guy that just looks bored on camera. I'll have to see if there's any more Hideshi Hino films, or at least, where he's written or directed out there other than the guinea pig films. I've got a bunch of his manga books, and they're pretty batshit out there. I think the last film I saw that really kind of evoked his stuff was Grotesque. Yeah, don't feed the seagulls. Seagulls are bastards. I like the fact that he wears the flasher Mac. So now we've got the archetypal sort of boy who cried wolf thing going on. Oh, fucking internet. Do you like Gaspar Noé films? What I've seen, yeah. I'm not sure the film's like me, though. See, that's one of the things. Richard E. Grant, I did work on a show that he did. His show visited the theatre I was working at, and he didn't seem like a particularly happy guy. I kind of got the feeling he's a difficult person, which is a real shame. I like Mark Hamill's approach to these kind of questions. He's been asked about some of the real kind of low points in his career, stuff like the Star Wars holiday special, for instance. And he's always had what I would say is probably the most healthy response to those kind of moments in his career. And he's kind of like saying, I'd like to see George include it in the next release of Star Wars box set or something like that. But who doesn't like Mark Hamill? The guy seems genuinely, 500% lovely. Just what made me laugh when I saw where is it? See if I can find it. Where are you? There we are. There we are. In that Jess Franco film, Christopher Lee, Mark Hamill. It's an odd film. Yeah, it was really panned by critics. What can I say? I'm a sucker for a flop. I'm in the camp that loves De Palma's Bonfire of the Vanities too. I think I found Hudson Hawk to be kind of repellent. You know me, I like my bad films. That film seemed to actively not like me. And I think partly it's because it doesn't really know what it wants to be. It has a weird bunch of identities that it's trying to kind of house under one banner. And it's like it doesn't quite work, at least for me anyway. It doesn't work by a long shot for me. Watched a 3D porn film once. I had to leave the theatre after 20 minutes as my nose started to irritate the screen. I think Hamill's always glad to just be working. And he strikes me as a guy that really just adores his fans. He's so appreciative of the people who love his work. And there's nothing sweeter than seeing the old photos from the Star Wars day of him and Carrie Fisher. It's such a love between the two. It's obvious even in the still photograph. I think Mark Hamill's is beyond kind of like towing the sort of big studio line. They've never really kind of given him much respect anyway. And his fans have always stuck with him no matter what he's been doing. Be it the smallest budget little thing or whether it's a big picture. So, yeah, I think he's always stayed very humble and felt like it's a privilege to do what he's doing. And he's made, decent living out of it. Star Wars pretty much set him up. But I like the guy. But I still can't get over the fact he's in this film. Damn it. CJ. I think CJ stands for cunty juvenile. It's just a poor farm boy from Tatooine who made it big. I think one of the best things about Star Wars is some of the performers that it made big. CJ. CJ. Where are you little shit? You're supposed to be rooting for this little kid by the end of the film. It's like, no, you just want to... Isn't it funny how he can be that imposing certain occasions, but then turn around and be this utterly pathetic little weedy guy in the next. It's a little surprising he didn't do a lot more, even if it was in the smaller films. Never seen that part with the bike in the film before. It must be a Mandela effect. Quite possibly. Just checking something. Yeah. Because I was just thinking, Brian De Palma with like the Untouchables. I didn't realise it was written by David Mamet. Actually, that's interesting. But I watched that with my brother when I was back home in Melton Mowbray, and it's like, God, that's a weird film. That is a genuinely strangely put together film. Michael on Keane is the only actor to have worked with both Jose and Miguel Ferrer. I did not know that. Cool, rats move in fast around here, don't they? Always makes me laugh in American films, like kind of like TV sitcoms and the likes, that they have phone cords that are about 50 meters long. Miguel Ferrer, just what what a performer! I absolutely adored just about everything he was in. What a sad thing that he died. Worst kid off, CJ, definitely CJ. Bob's annoying, but at least he isn't a completely hateable little brat. You know, you don't get the feeling that his annoyance is utterly deliberate like it is with CJ. He always played that really cynical type of character really, really well. But you always got the feeling that there was like a quite a warm human being underneath it. Talking about rats, I got a field mouse somewhere in my house. The cat came in with. They're cute, but can be quite destructive. Interesting sort of documentary type kind of footage. The way that this scene is shot, it's almost Mondo. So many of the people that the actors that were in Twin Peaks were really just adorable people. You kind of it's when you see the return, there's a real pathos to it as well. Especially that scene with Hawk and the log lady. I mean, seriously, that was not many things make me want to cry. That really did. That was so touching. I think it's especially when you see like David Lynch and those people kind of like in behind the scenes type footage and all that kind of stuff, and how tight knit they were, how supportive they were of each other. They were like a little film family. The final day, spoiler alert. There are aspects of this that do kind of do that sort of pseudo documentary kind of thing. It's almost like a kind of slasher version of the Andromeda strain or something like that. That's one we should do a watch along of sometime. Is the Andromeda strain? And Michael Crichton stuff has always been kind of fascinating. God, he's a panty sniffer. stupid teacher thought I killed my friend. Oh dear. Robert Wise was so ahead of his time with his sci-fi Andromeda. It's a masterpiece of a movie. Ray Wise has those really kind of like that ability to seem like a very sweet, innocent, safe person, and then switch it around and be an absolute frigging lunatic. He can do the crazy eyes really well. It's kind of funny when they kind of like David Lynch revealed to him what his character Leland was, where the arc of his character as they got to it. He was like kind of like, I don't want to do that, it's horrible. It's like very objected to it quite strongly, but he sort of knuckled down and kind of like convinced of it, and then came to appreciate what it was that Lynch was asking of him. Oh yes, the Andromeda Strain, one of the absolute best. Well, I'll have to see if we can find it online. But a great film. I remember being deeply disturbed by it as a kid. It was quite exhilarating. God, I hate this kid. I don't know how much my hatred for this kid is actually kind of deliberate on the behalf of the director, and that's what he was going for. Whether it's the performance or what. And if it is the performance, how much of that is the kid and how much of that is directorial? Well, he's not a bad performer as a kid. As child performances go, definitely, a good 6 or 7. Yeah, right. Ray Wise has presence. He can be understated when he wants to be, and he can be completely and utterly. He can go full Nick Cage as well, as is demonstrated in Twin Peaks. I love how the psychologist in this is like wrong from moment one right through to the end. Does make you wonder what the commentary on psychology is in this movie. What the intent of it was. Because the psychologist is completely wrong at every step and has missed information that is absolutely key to the case. And you kind of wonder how. How does someone like this end up in the care of someone like this psychologist? Without them actually having some sort of background, of his crimes. A lot of that stuff that I just mentioned really is kind of stuff that you would sort of think could possibly be detrimental to the film in some respects, but I don't feel like it breaks the film. It's one of those sort of plot hole-ish type things that kind of suggests something as well. Does it really, Iris? Is that even still available though? Because I'd be interested in that. Ah. I may well have to get that. I always feel sorry for them. I mean, it's just like manages to steal a little bit of kind of like me time away from this satanically awful little bastard of a child. And she gets to have a little bit of fun, and not like kind of outrageous. It's not like she's going out to like kind of discos every night and just partying it up and all that kind of stuff. She gets these little breaks away with the object of her affections, and the kid manages to ruin it every fucking time. Yeah, I think definitely CJ is number one in annoying child characters. Not even Bob. I mean, Bob's one of those child characters that's just a little annoying, partly because of the writing, not because he's a malicious little shit, but just because, yeah, the writing of the child's clearly done by an adult that barely seems to understand, children. In this, it's one of those things that CJ is written by somebody who seems to have a very unfortunate outlook on children, or at least kind of sees the worst in them. They sort of distilled it, went through 15 drafts to get it absolutely fucking perfect, and threw it out in this film. What a little bastard. Bob redeems himself at the end of Demons. Why is it that in every film of this nature where you've got a babysitter in America, the first thing they do is invite their boyfriend over to fuck while they're looking after the kids? It's always one of the curious things about horror films of this nature is its relationship with sex. It's kind of interesting in this in some respects because of the whole the killer's nature. Relationship with sex as well. This hysterical, dysfunctional kind of relationship to physical intimacy. But it does amuse me. It's like every time there's a babysitter in these films, they're sneaking in a quick game of hide the sausage. Bob from House by the Cemetery is in The New Barbarians. Okay. I can't remember if I've seen The New Barbarians. I know it's been suggested to me on a few occasions. funny actually. I mean, there's so many films I've seen that I kind of like. I've forgotten about. It's like doing Jeff Lieberman stuff. I revisited Remote Control, but I was kind of looking through the filmography, and it's like Remote Control, and it kind of like said a little bit about it. It was like, I've seen that. As soon as I saw a couple of like screenshots from it, I was like, kind of, yeah, I remember it now. But I rewatched it for the sake of the review, and that's what I do. You know, it's when I'm reviewing a film, I will quite often sort of visit a few other films as well, just to see directorial kind of elements played out through several films. In this case, it was because Remote Control has some similar kind of aspects of this sort of recreation taking over you and controlling you. How the hell did she mistake him? I guess they did the whole kind of like taller thing earlier on, didn't they? Oh, yeah. I'm guaranteeing this would be one of the scenes that would have been cut by the BBFC back in the day. Shots of that penetration of the ice pick or ice hammer. Yeah, Adam, I think it was. I think because they sort of set it up earlier in the film. Um, Although you have to admit, for a kid of his age, that's some pretty impressive props building skills, especially impromptu. It's not like he's got a workshop. I mean, this kid is like Adam Savage levels of kind of creativity when it comes to this stuff. You know, I think the fact that they actually set up the kind of he's pulled that gag before is pretty impressive. Do I remember Doc Savage? No, I don't. Why wouldn't he be wearing a Sid Haig mask? Perhaps they just couldn't afford Sid Haig. They're going full Halloween here, aren't they? It's got to be said, he's kind of resilient, isn't he? I have to say, he's got good grouping. I'm no gun nut, but goddamn. Considering he's got about 5 or 6 holes in him, he's breathing extraordinarily well. I think you're out of bullets, mate. Got to be out of bullets by now. Yeah, 5 bullets. Oh, there's your shot 6. Feeling lucky nutter. Almost stabbed his leg there. Yes, he did. God damn it. I wouldn't usually root for the child to get what's coming to him, but god damn. He's got a full-on arsenal going on. It's just like a super, super violent version of Home Alone. I suppose you could sort of wrap this up with the because it's a little bit sort of spanky kind of thing going on. He gets the that's where he gets the weird relationship between sex and violence. It's a bit tenuous though. You can tell that even from his early days, this guy was just so uptight. You know, you don't wear a dicky bow unless you're a little uptight. It is tenuous, like the way the ending is cut together. I don't know. It's got some energy to it. Very bleak ending to a pretty bleak film. He. Extracts of a bit of a 70s kung fu. Yes, they do. Oh, God, Brian. Just bring out the dead bodies and put them on display in the lawn. It's fine. All right, Kerry. Oh, you smirky little bastard. And there you go. I hope you enjoyed that, well, as much as you can enjoy a film like this. Downbeat to say the least. But not a bad film. Not a bad film at all. So, I guess we'll call it an evening there. I hope you had a good evening with that. I certainly did. It was kind of fun to revisit that because it's been a while since I've seen it. Yeah. You just... CJ, you just want him... What a little bastard. So, I'll have a look around. I'll see if I can find a copy of Andromeda Strain. Maybe we'll do that next week as part of this. So, but until then, I should say have a good weekend and enjoy the rest of your next week until we do this again. And hopefully I shall have a review up by hopefully Monday. Hoping to get it done by Monday because I'm heading off to the seaside for Tuesday. So I won't have much time to do it then. So I'm going to make a concerted effort to try to get it up tomorrow, if not Monday at the latest. So I shall bid you a good evening and a good weekend and take care. And thank you for joining. Good night, folks.